Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and today I wanted to finally go over what I consider to be the best and worst offensive operators in Rainbow Six Siege at the end of year 4. I gotta admit that I had a hard time coming up with this list because I find that a lot of the operators in this game are incredibly powerful. Like, there are a lot of amazing operators on offense, but I think I finally came up with a list that I can be happy with. And so to start us off in the S tier, the operators that I think are good no matter the map or situation, you're always going to have a good time with them, we have Ashe, Twitch, Hibana, Zofia, and Thatcher. I realize that Thatcher may not be the coolest operator in Rainbow Six Siege. His gadget is incredibly basic. He just throws an EMP and then things get taken out. But the amount of utility that he brings to the offensive team is basically second to none. The amount of defenders in this game where their entire design is to slow down the progress of the offensive team, you've got Capcan, the recently buffed Ella, you're constantly seeing her now, you got Lesion, Bandit Mute, all of them are designed to slow or stop offense in their tracks, but you have Thatcher and he nullifies them entirely. It doesn't matter what map that you're on, you're always going to find some use. Either it's to get through that reinforcement or just to dispatch of all of the other gadgets that are in the game. The same story is essentially true for Hibana. You're going to notice a trend with these top tier operators, and that is that every single one of them is incredibly versatile. And I would say that out of the hard breachers, that Hibana is the most resourceful. And then to top it all off, well, her weapon is a bit difficult to use and it requires some time to master because you only have 20 rounds at your disposal. Once you do, it's arguably one of the better weapons on the offensive team. It is incredibly powerful. And for that reason, I think that she absolutely deserves this top tier rank. Now, speaking of the best weapon in the game, we have Twitch. Ubisoft has had a hard time balancing out this operator because they keep attempting to slowly reduce her effectiveness of that weapon, but it really hasn't had all that much of an impact. In my opinion, I think most people would agree that it is the best weapon on offense or in the entire game. It is that powerful. At the end of the day, Rainbow Six Siege is an FPS. Being able to take out the other team is going to be highly desirable, and her gadget also brings some utility. Like, don't get me wrong, it's no slouch. It's probably the weaker part of her. It really just comes down to being able to destroy anyone that you come across for why she is so strong. Now, as for Zofia, she is someone who has slowly risen in the ranks for me, which is kind of ironic considering that she is weaker than she ever was. When she first released, she had access to 4 concussive nades and 2 impacts. Ubisoft realized that was a bit too much utility and they nerfed it down to 3. That was also too strong, and now we're down to 2. The thing is, though, is that doesn't matter whatsoever. Even if she just had access to her impact nades, I still think she would be one of the strongest options available because of how much utility that it brings. The thing about Ashe, who we're about to talk about here in a second, is that most people are going to hear that her breaching is about to go off and then react accordingly. You don't get that early warning sign when it comes to Zofia. And then to top it all off, you obviously still have access to her stun nade. You can use it to scout out the room because it has that proximity detonation. So if you didn't get a detonate right away, you know that the coast is clear, or if you just simply want to stun them and then rush on in, you also have that capability. And then finally, we have Ashe. Ashe has always been a top tier operator. She's 3 speed, she has access to arguably one of the better weapons in the game, and while it doesn't have access to an ACOG more, which was admittedly one of the reasons why I was considering dropping her down a level, I don't think it takes away from the fact that she can also get around pretty much any obstacle that she comes across. Moving on down to our A tier, we've got Nomad, Maverick, Thermite Jackal, IQ, Buck Kappa, Tau, Sledge, and Doka B. If Nomad had slightly better weapons, I truly do think that she'd be one of the most overpowered operators in the game, and that comes down to her gadget. Her gadget has almost no counter and makes it nearly impossible for roamers to flank and do their job, which is pretty important in Rainbow Six Siege. If you don't have access to an impact nade, you're basically out of luck. You can try to go through that doorway, but you're gonna leave yourself incredibly vulnerable while you try to get yourself back up on your feet, and if anyone is in the vicinity, and you're not gonna know if they're not, you're basically going to get taken out for free. Really, the only thing that is balancing her out are that her weapons are terrible. I have tried to make them work on numerous occasions and I just can't. Either you have to go through a 5-minute reload animation for whatever reason, or you're having to use a weapon that, has more rounds at its disposal, but you're also going to have to deal with a lot of recoil, a slow RPM, and not a lot of damage. It's just not highly desirable. But thankfully so, because as I said, if she had anything better, she would just be straight busted. Now, Thermite should be a no-brainer. You need to get through reinforced walls on offense. It's basically a prerequisite if you want to win the round, and he's arguably the best operator to do so. And while his weapon does require a bit of finesse, there's some days where I can take out anyone that I come across, I'm landing up all of my shots, and other days I can't hit the broadside of a barn door. It seems to be a bit finicky, but it doesn't take away from the fact that when we have someone that is constantly playing as him, I'm never going to be disappointed. As for Maverick, he has always been a reliable choice, but the reason why I didn't place him up into the S tier like a lot of people may have expected is that while he still doesn't have a counter, I wish that this is something that Ubisoft would remedy. I think that most operators need to have some sort of counter in the game. He finally makes noise. When he first released, he was silent. He could open up tiny little holes out of nowhere and you would have no idea that they were there. All of a sudden, you get taken out from an angle that you weren't expecting because you were thinking that that reinforcement was going to protect you. No, there was a Maverick, and you had no clue that he was in the vicinity. It was completely busted. Thankfully, that is something that we no longer have to worry about. He's still able to open up hatches and walls if they're going for a bandit trick. He's essentially kind of a Thatcher 2.0. He's one of the best ways of getting around a bandit trick, so that's one great reason to use him. And all in all, he's just a really reliable operator. Speaking of reliable, we have Buck and Sledge. Sledge has always been one of my favorite characters. He doesn't do anything flashy. All these other operators in the game have really cool gadgets and gizmos, high-tech, futuristic technology, and he just has a sledgehammer that he hits things with. But that's all that he needs. He can use this to open up lines of sight above the objective room, which is going to make life miserable for anyone that's down below. He can use nades, which is one of the most desirable gadgets that you can have on offense. And then to top it all off, while his weapon, just like everything else about him, really isn't anything spectacular, it has low recoil, it's laser beam-like accurate, and it just gets the job done. The same is true for Buck. Now, he does require a bit more finesse. Most people kind of avoid him because his weapon has a substantial amount of recoil, but I feel like he makes up with it for the insane amount of versatility that his gadget provides. It doesn't matter if it's a barricade in front of you, the ceiling above, or the floor below, it really does it all. And once again, he does take a long time to master. Once you do, you are going to be highly rewarded. As for IQ, she has slowly risen in power over the years. When Rainbow Six Siege first launched, she was admittedly, and I think this was the general consensus of the community, that she was the worst operator on offense because there just wasn't enough gadgets on defense to justify playing as her. But as time has gone on, that has obviously changed. You need a dispatch of all the Valkyrie cameras that are scattered around the map. You need to find that nearly invisible Echo drone that's on the objective that is going to stop you from planting the diffuser. Information gathering is one of the most highly desirable tools that you have on defense. Valkyrie without her cameras is pretty mediocre. She is one of the worst weapons in the game. An Echo without his drones, while still a bit more potent than Valkyrie, is nowhere near as powerful, and she's going to be able to neutralize them entirely. Now, Jackal, I honestly don't really know where to place him because I haven't been able to play against him for like a year now. Ever since they introduced the pick and ban system, he's never in ranked. Ever. Even though he just got a nerf not too long ago, it doesn't seem to matter amongst the community because they still constantly sideline him, and justifiably. He makes roaming incredibly frustrating, and the only real counter to him is to not move from point A to point B. You need to roam in this game. There's two different roles. You've got roamers and you've got anchors. If everyone's just anchoring on the objective because they're always running a Jackal and you don't have any way of dealing with him, you're gonna lose those rounds. You need to have people to slow them down and get flanks off if you wanna win, at least especially at those higher tiers, and Jackal just makes that very, very difficult. And to make matters even worse, he also has some awesome weapons as well. Capitao is someone that I have really fallen in love with because he's able to dictate the movement of the defensive team, and if used properly, that is going to give you a massive advantage. You can use his fire arrows to obviously flush people out that are in a corner, which is going to make it very easy for you to take them out, either with the damage of the fire arrow itself, or when they're trying to run away from that source, or you can just simply use his smoke arrows to block off lines of sight and then plant the objective. His only real weakness is that he's countered by Wamai, but Wamai doesn't really see a whole lot of play, and for that very reason, I just think that he is a top tier choice. And then finally, we have Dokkaebi. I had a hard time placing Dokkaebi in this list because on the one hand, her utility is very frustrating. When you're roaming, she's able to spot you, or when you're on the objective, when they're pushing on in, they're able to identify exactly where you are. If you need to go through that short animation to turn off the phone, that leaves you vulnerable, or you can sit there giving offense all the information that they need to swoop on in and take you out. The only real weakness that she has, in my opinion, are her weapons. I struggle with DMRs. I just can't make them work, and the fact that her SMG-12 got that big recoil nerf a while ago, you can't really fall back on that anymore, which was basically the reason or the way I played Dokkaebi. But that doesn't take away from the fact that once you do get good with that DMR, her utility is just insane. Moving on down to our B category, we have Gridlock, Ying, Lion, Blackbeard, and Montaigne. I adore Gridlock. She, in my opinion, is the balanced version of Nomad. Her weapon is incredible, but the downside is that she is 3 armor. She moves slowly, and you need to be able to peek those corners quickly, which really isn't all that advantageous. But the fact that she also has access to smoke nades, you can really control the objective. Place down a few of her track stingers, throw a few smoke nades around, let your team plant the diffuser, and now defense is gonna have to work their way through all of that, which is going to be quite challenging. Not as overpowered as someone like Nomad, but in my opinion, much more balanced. Speaking of someone who wasn't balanced forever, we have Lion. He is annoying now, but I don't think that he's overpowered like he was when he first came out. His gadget is more of a nuisance. Like, standing still for a split second, yes, can put you at a disadvantage, but more often than not, it isn't enough to really push it over the edge to the point where you and your team are just going to flat out lose like it was before. His weapons are reliable, but not really the best in the game. Like, he just feels like a well-rounded character. If you are pairing him with a Dokkaebi and a Jackal, it's a nightmare, but as long as you've kind of sidelined that Jackal or the Dokkaebi at the very beginning, it's not really all that big of a deal. Now, as for Ying, I considered bumping her up into the A rank since this most recent update because I just think she's much more powerful than she used to be. I believe that we're going to see a lot more Ying in the next couple of months. She still does require a lot more thought and finesse compared to many of the other operators. You can't just throw in your gadget or rush on in and think that you're going to be successful. You have to play her a bit more methodically, but because her gadget, once you charge it up, literally activates as soon as it hits the ground and flashes anyone in the vicinity, there's literally nothing a defender can do in that situation. If they didn't bring a Jaeger or a Mai, it's basically GG for that operator. And so I think it might be a bit too early to tell because this update has only been out for a little over a week. I truly do think that in the next couple of months, we are going to see a lot more Ying action. Now, Blackbeard is an operator that I believe never deserved to be in a game like Rainbow Six Siege. He has seen so many changes. He started his journey with a shield that had 800 HP. He was literally immortal outside of a building. There was nothing a defender could do other than try and flank him from the outside. He was incredibly overpowered. They then removed that one shield and gave him 2. They nerfed, I think, those 2 shields 2 or 3 times. Like, he's now to the point where his shield breaks almost instantaneously with every operator, but it still gives him that slight advantage because even if it did break, that one shot could mean the difference and give him the opportunity to take you out with those headshots. I'm really hoping that he gets a complete rework in the future because I truly do believe that he goes against the very fundamentals of what Rainbow Six Siege is. And then finally, we have Montaigne. Shield operators is something that Ubisoft has really struggled balancing. He originally was a juggernaut who could push into a room, quickly lower his shield, either melee you, one-shot you, or ADS and take you out while your attention was diverted because the other guy just entered into the room. There really wasn't much that you could do about it. But now, because it takes much longer to aim down sight, there isn't that one-shot potential anymore, he's kind of fallen by the wayside. He's still strong, I think that he's balanced, but it's because of that difficulty that Ubisoft has with balancing them out. I'm just not exactly sure where his place is anymore. We're gonna way down to our C category. We have Nook, Finka, Blitz, Glaz, and Fuse. Fuse is someone that I think has a lot of potential, and if used properly, can pull off some really fun plays, I think his gadget is what really holds him back. His gadget doesn't really do a whole lot. It's meant to take out operators, but because everyone knows what to look out for, it never really accomplishes that goal. You can use it to take out other gadgets like Jaeger devices or barbed wire that's on the ground, but there's a lot of other operators that will just simply do that better. The only real thing that it accomplishes somewhat decently is that you can use it to flush players out of areas, and then if you're up above and you've opened up another hole, you can maybe take them out when they move from one side of the room on over to the other. That's really about it though. He's 3 armor, so he's slow just like Gridlock, which isn't all that desirable. His weapon is strong. It's probably one of the actual stronger weapons in the game, but it's because of his slow movement and a very lackluster gadget for why I think that he probably could use some improving. Speaking of someone who just got a buff though, we have Nook. I like Nook. I like her a lot now. The only reason why I didn't bump her into the B, I don't think she's A category yet, but the only reason I kept her here is that this change happened only recently. We're gonna need to take another couple of weeks or months to really get a good understanding if she is in a more well-balanced state, but I think that people are gonna be surprised by her. Her gadget might still need an upgrade if it lasted a little bit longer. That would be a vast improvement over what it is right now, but even still, I think that she is in a much more balanced state. Now, as for Glaz, I don't know what to do with this character. He has probably seen more changes than any other operator in Rainbow Six Siege. He went from being bottom tier awful to overpowered to terrible to overpowered, and now we're back to semi-decent? I don't really know. The fact that when you aim down sight with his scope, everyone shows up as bright yellow, no matter if you're moving or not, I think was a great step in the right direction, but I'm not sure if it went far enough. Finka is someone that I want to like. She has the potential to be a really cool addition to Siege, but I find her to be more annoying than anything else. In a game that requires you to master the recoil of all of the operators, to have a character that basically makes that recoil non-existent, you would think that would be advantageous, but more often than not, that just makes me overcompensate for the recoil now, and I'm not lining up those headshots because I'm expecting the weapon to kick on up, and it doesn't, and then I get taken out. And then finally, we have Blitz. I know that he's a meme and no one likes to go against him, but when we really get down to it, he's not really all that great. He has a very, very slow aim down sight speed. If anyone even has a halfway decent reaction time, as soon as he ADSs, you're gonna have a massive advantage. And then last but not least, all the way down in the D rank, we have Kali and Amaru. I want to love Amaru. When we first learned about her, I thought that she was going to be one of the most impactful operators that we've seen in quite some time. The ability to literally grapple hook around the map sounded, in theory, like it was going to be a game changer. In reality, though, it's not whatsoever. It leaves you incredibly vulnerable. The only redeeming quality of her is that her weapons are halfway decent. But I don't think that makes up for the fact that her gadget is practically useless, and even more than useless, because it gets you taken out more often than not. Kali is another operator that I thought had a lot of potential. A one-shot body shot weapon with essentially Thatcher 2.0 gadget, what's not to like? Apparently everything. Her weapon is just not reliable. That higher optic makes it very situational. You need to have some distance between you and the enemy. On offense, you need to get into the objective room. You need to close the gap eventually, and that puts her at a disadvantage. And so while you do have a decent secondary to fall back on, it's still not going to be as advantageous as all of the other primaries that you have access to for basically every other operator in the game. I really wanted to like Kali. Like, in theory, she sounds incredible, but in reality, she leaves a lot to be desired. But yeah, guys, that is what it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I wanted to apologize for taking so long to get this out. It's been about a month since I released my best and worst defensive video, and that's kind of unacceptable. I got busy with other projects. They came out with an update that I was not expecting, and so it took a bit longer than I would have liked, but I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought about this list, though. Nothing is set in stone here. This was just simply my opinion, and so did you agree with where I placed these operators, or would you have made some changes? Give me your guys' thoughts down below. But yeah, guys, until next time, have a good one, and take it easy.